Hi, and welcome to the English Talk Community playlist. I'm Julia, and I'm really glad you're here with me today. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're someone who's learning English. Maybe you've been studying for a while, or maybe you just started recently. You might understand English when you read or listen to it, but when it comes time to speak or write, you feel unsure. Maybe you feel nervous, or you freeze. And if that's true for you, you're definitely not alone. This podcast is for people exactly like you, people who want to learn English in a real, human way through everyday stories and simple practice. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep going. Today, I want to talk with you about something that seems small but can make a huge difference. It's not grammar, it's not pronunciation. It's something much simpler. Small actions, small decisions. The kind of things you do every day, sometimes without even thinking. Things like helping someone, asking a question, smiling at a stranger, or saying one sentence out loud even if you're afraid of making a mistake. These little things can have a powerful effect, not just on the people around you, but on how you feel about your English, your confidence, and your learning journey. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to speak English, even though you didn't feel ready? Maybe you were traveling. Maybe someone asked you for help. Maybe you were watching a movie and wanted to repeat a line. These moments might seem small, but they're actually full of opportunity. In fact, sometimes they teach you more than a grammar lesson or a vocabulary list ever could. You see, real language learning doesn't only happen in classrooms or textbooks. It happens when you live, when you open up, when you use English in a way that connects with people, even in the simplest situations. That's why in today's episode, we're going to hear a few stories, true-to-life stories about people just like you. People from different parts of the world who faced a challenge or took a small step, and in doing so, they discovered something valuable. Maybe they learned a new phrase. Maybe they gained confidence. Maybe they just realized, hey, I can do this. What I love about these stories is that they're not about experts or perfect speakers. They're about real people making real progress. People who speak slowly, people who make mistakes, people who feel nervous, but try anyway. And that's the heart of language learning, isn't it? It's not about being flawless. It's about showing up. It's about making the choice to use what you know and to learn from each experience as it comes. So I want to invite you to listen closely today. Not just with your ears, but with your heart. Try to imagine yourself in each story. Ask yourself, what would I do in this situation? How would I feel? What would I say? And after you listen, I encourage you to write down one thing that stood out to you. Maybe it's a new word. Maybe it's a question. Maybe it's just a feeling of connection. Whatever it is, take a moment to reflect on it, and let that be part of your learning for today. And one more thing. Don't worry about understanding every single word. This podcast is here to help you build natural listening skills, and sometimes that means hearing the rhythm and flow of the language, even if you don't catch everything. That's okay. That's normal. That's how we learn. Think about how babies learn to speak. They listen first, a lot, and they don't understand everything. But little by little, they begin to pick up words, sounds, and meaning. You can do the same. You are doing the same. Also, remember this. You are part of a global community. Right now, someone in Brazil is listening, someone in Germany, someone in South Korea, someone in Egypt. We are all connected by our desire to learn and grow. That's why this is not just a podcast. It's a community, a place where you are welcome just as you are, with your own story, your own accent, your own voice. So thank you for being here. You matter, and your effort matters. Throughout this episode, you're going to meet people from different countries, different cultures, and different backgrounds. And you'll notice something. No matter where they're from, they all share something in common. They all took action. They didn't wait until they were perfect. They used what they had, where they were, and that's what made the difference. Sometimes it was just one sentence, one question, one moment of courage. But that moment became a turning point. So if you've ever told yourself, I'm not good enough yet, or I'll speak when I feel ready, I want to challenge you today. What if you're already more ready than you think? What if one small action today could change your confidence forever? What if that thing you're afraid of doing is actually the key to moving forward? And what if the way to become fluent isn't by memorizing long lists of words, but by speaking just one sentence today? One real sentence, from your own experience to someone who's willing to listen. Maybe that person is a friend. Maybe it's a stranger. Maybe it's your future self, listening to your voice and saying, "I'm proud of you." Because language is not just a tool. It's a bridge. It's how we connect, how we express ourselves, and how we understand others. And the more we use it, even imperfectly, the stronger that bridge becomes. So, take a breath, relax your shoulders, listen with curiosity, and let yourself enjoy this time together. This is your space to grow, explore, and feel inspired. Ready to begin? Let's go. Today I want to talk to you about the purpose of this episode. What are we doing here and why does it matter? Well, if you're here, it's probably because you're learning English. Maybe you're listening while walking, commuting, cleaning your house, or just relaxing with your headphones on. Wherever you are and however you're listening, I want to invite you to slow down for a moment. Not in a boring way, but in a meaningful way. Because in today's episode, we're going to look at something very special: how everyday moments, things that seem small or ordinary, can actually teach us powerful lessons, including lessons about learning English. You're going to hear stories today. Not big dramatic ones, not fairy tales, just simple, real-life moments experienced by people like you. People who faced a situation, made a decision, or helped someone, and learned something important from that experience. And in many of these stories, English plays a part. Sometimes it's in the background, sometimes it's right at the center. But always, the lesson goes deeper than just vocabulary or grammar. You see, language learning is not only about memorizing words or passing exams. Of course, those things can help. But real learning, the kind that sticks, the kind that changes you, often happens when you're doing something meaningful. When you're having a conversation, helping a friend, meeting someone new, or stepping into a situation that feels just a little bit uncomfortable. That's where growth lives. Right there, in the middle of action. So, what's the purpose of today's episode? It's to show you that English isn't something separate from your life. It's already in your life. And the more you pay attention to the moments that shape you, the more you'll see that learning English isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more of who you already are. Let me give you an example. One of the stories you'll hear today is about a young woman named Sarah. She's from Spain, and she always dreamed of opening her own bakery. She loved baking cakes, and everyone told her she had a talent. But she was afraid that she would fail, afraid that no one would buy her cakes, afraid that she wasn't ready. That fear almost stopped her. But one day, someone close to her encouraged her to take a small step. Not a big, scary leap, just one small step. She did, and it changed her life. Now, what does this have to do with English? Everything. Because fear is fear. Whether you're afraid to sell your first cake, speak your first sentence, or send your first message in English, the feeling is the same. And the way to move forward is also the same. One small step at a time. Another story you'll hear is about a man named Ahmed from Egypt. One evening, he helped his neighbor who had locked himself out of his house. While they waited together, they started to talk. Nothing big, just a simple conversation. But in that moment, something opened up. They shared stories, they connected, and they built trust. And here's what's interesting. Ahmed wasn't even thinking about learning English, but the act of listening, responding, and engaging in conversation, that's what language is about. Real connection. Sometimes we think learning has to be complicated, that we need the perfect course, the perfect book, or the perfect time. But the truth is, learning can happen anywhere. In the street, at the store, on the phone, in your kitchen, at the bus stop, or while sitting quietly and listening to a podcast like this one. The important thing is to stay present, to stay open, and to see your daily life as part of the learning process. And let's not forget about kindness. Many of the stories you'll hear today involve simple acts of kindness, helping someone carry a bag, offering a phone, or sharing a cup of tea. These actions don't require perfect English. They don't require long sentences or complicated grammar. They just require a bit of heart. And guess what? When you act with kindness, when you engage with people, even in small ways, you naturally start to use language. You start to speak. You start to listen more carefully. You start to grow. So maybe you're thinking, But Julia, I don't live in an English-speaking country. That's okay. Neither do many of our listeners. We have people tuning in from South Korea, Brazil, Japan, Italy, and many other places around the world. But English is not limited by borders. It lives in music, in stories, in games, in messages, in podcasts like this one. And it lives in you. Every time you choose to listen, to practice, to write something down, to speak out loud, or to simply think in English for a few moments a day. That's why the purpose of this episode is not to teach you a list of vocabulary or give you a grammar rule. The purpose is to help you reflect, to think, to feel, and maybe, just maybe, to take action. Because here's the question I want you to ask yourself, not only at the end of this episode, but right now as you're listening, what can I do today with what I already have? That's the key. Not what will I do when I'm fluent, not what can I do when I feel confident, but today, right now, with what you already know. Maybe that means greeting someone in English. Maybe it means writing a short paragraph in your notebook. Maybe it means repeating a phrase you liked from this podcast out loud. Or maybe it just means listening with your full attention and being proud of yourself for showing up. Whatever it is, that small action matters. And when you do it, you're not only learning English, you're becoming a more open, courageous, and connected version of yourself. Let's keep going. Let me tell you a story about Jiwu, a young woman from South Korea. Jiwu had always struggled with English listening skills. She had studied grammar in school, memorized long vocabulary lists, and even tried watching English movies with subtitles. But every time someone spoke to her in English, especially native speakers, she would freeze. The words felt too fast, too unfamiliar, and her confidence would disappear. She believed she just wasn't good at understanding spoken English. She felt that no matter how much she studied, something was always missing. One afternoon, Jiwu was walking through a busy shopping district in Seoul. It was a warm day, and the streets were filled with people shopping, eating, and enjoying their time outside. As she turned a corner, she noticed a woman standing near a map posted on the wall. The woman looked confused and was holding her phone in one hand, clearly trying to figure out where to go. Jiwu noticed her hesitation, and something about the moment made her stop. She didn't usually speak to strangers, especially in English, but something pushed her to approach. With a bit of nervousness, Jiwu walked up and said, "Can I help you?" It was a simple question, just 5 words, but it came out clearly and with kindness. The woman turned to her with relief in her eyes and replied, "Yes, thank you. I'm trying to find the Gyeongbokgung Palace. Am I going the right way?" Jiwu felt a moment of panic. She understood the question, but she wasn't sure she could respond quickly enough in English. Still, she took a breath and tried. "Yes, it's close," she said. "Go straight and then left at the traffic light." The woman smiled and they continued to speak for a few minutes. The tourist asked if it was a good time to visit, and Jiwu answered as best as she could. She used simple words and gestures. She pointed, nodded, smiled. And something incredible happened. She realized she could follow the conversation. Not every word, but enough. She wasn't translating in her head, she was listening. She didn't have perfect sentences, but she had something more important: connection. After helping the woman, Jiwu walked away feeling something new: confidence. It wasn't the kind that comes from getting a test answer right. It was deeper. She had used English in a real situation. She had helped someone. And the moment she said, "Can I help you?" she had also helped herself. That small sentence, so basic, so familiar, became her key to a new mindset. Later that evening, Jiwu sat on her bed and thought about what had happened. She remembered the tourist's face, the exchange of smiles, and the way the words had flowed more naturally than she expected. She realized she didn't need to understand every word to understand the meaning, and she didn't need to speak perfectly to be understood. She just needed to try, with an open heart. This one moment shifted how she saw English. It wasn't just a subject from school anymore. It was a tool, a bridge, a way to connect with the world. And from that day on, she started to practice listening differently. She stopped worrying so much about catching every detail and started focusing on the general message. She began listening to short English stories like the ones in this podcast and repeating phrases out loud. She also remembered that phrase, "Can I help you?" and started to collect other simple, useful phrases she could use in daily life. Phrases like, "Do you need directions?" "Is this your first time here?" and "Let me show you." She practiced them in front of the mirror, said them quietly while riding the bus, and even recorded herself saying them. She didn't try to memorize long lists of vocabulary anymore. She focused on short, powerful expressions that could be used in real conversations. Jiwu also noticed something else. When she stopped worrying about understanding everything, she actually understood more. Her ears became more used to the rhythm of English, to the intonation, to the way words connected. She wasn't afraid of fast speech anymore. She started to hear chunks of language, not isolated words. And that made all the difference. One weekend, Jiwu visited a cultural center where many international visitors came. This time, she wanted someone to ask her a question. She hoped someone would need help. And sure enough, a couple from Germany was looking for the nearest subway station. Jiwu didn't hesitate. She smiled and said, "Can I help you?" The words came naturally now. She gave them directions, wished them a nice trip, and even recommended a nearby cafe. After they thanked her and walked away, she stood there, for a moment, just feeling proud. Her journey wasn't about suddenly becoming fluent. It wasn't about mastering English overnight. It was about noticing the small moments that changed her. That first question, "Can I help you?" had opened something inside her. It had reminded her that language is about people, about kindness, and about being brave enough to speak even when you feel unsure. Jiwoo's story is a reminder to all of us that English learning doesn't always happen in classrooms. Sometimes it happens on a sidewalk, in the middle of a crowded street, when you decide to speak to someone. Sometimes all it takes is a question, a moment of courage, and a little kindness to change the way you see yourself, and the way you experience a language. And now I invite you to think about this. What's one phrase you already know in English that you could use to help someone? What small interaction could you have today, just like Jiwu, that might open a new door for your listening and your confidence? Here's something I wish more English learners heard often. You don't have to speak perfect English. You just need to speak clearly and calmly. That's it. You don't need to memorize complicated grammar rules or use impressive vocabulary to have a meaningful conversation. In fact, the simpler and clearer your words, the better your message will be understood. Let's think about how we talk in our own native languages. When someone asks us for help, or when we're explaining something important to a friend, we don't try to sound like a textbook. We focus on getting the message across. We slow down, choose the right words, and try to be kind and clear. That's what real communication is all about. English is no different. One thing I often tell learners in our community is this: aim for clarity, not perfection. Imagine you're trying to give directions to someone who looks lost. You don't need to say, "If you proceed straight ahead for approximately 100 meters, you will encounter an intersection at which point you should veer left." That sounds like a robot. Instead, you could simply say, "Go straight, then turn left at the light." It's direct. It's natural. And it works. Think about the phrase, "Are you okay?" It's short, simple, but powerful. You don't need a long speech to show you care. You don't need advanced vocabulary to offer help. Kindness comes through in your tone and your clarity, not in your grammar score. Now let's take a quick example from a listener in Mexico named Luis. Luis had been practicing English for years. He had read books, studied tenses, and could explain grammar rules in detail. But when it came to speaking, he felt nervous. He was always afraid of making mistakes. One day, he was waiting at a bus stop when a tourist couple nearby looked confused. They were pointing at their phone and then looking around. Luis hesitated. Should he speak? What if he used the wrong word? What if they didn't understand him? But then he remembered something from one of our podcast episodes. He remembered that clarity matters more than perfection. So he took a breath, walked up, and said slowly, "Do you need help?" That's all. Just 4 words. The couple smiled and said yes. They showed him their map and asked how to get to a museum. Luis pointed down the street and said, "Go that way. 10 minutes walk. The museum is near a big church." His sentences weren't perfect. He forgot an article. He mixed up the tense a little, but they understood. They smiled, thanked him, and walked away. Luis felt proud. Not because he used perfect grammar, but because he connected. He helped. He communicated. Later, he told us that moment changed how he thought about speaking English. He realized that when he stopped trying to sound perfect and focused on speaking slowly and clearly, he actually felt more confident. and people responded better. He started practicing short, everyday phrases that he could use in real situations. Things like, "Excuse me, where is the train station?" Or, "Can I ask you something?" Or, "Sorry, I don't understand. Can you repeat?" He also noticed something interesting. When he focused on being clear, native speakers started slowing down for him too. They appreciated his effort and matched his pace. The conversation became easier for both sides. So here's a tip for you. When you speak English, imagine you are speaking to someone who is not a native speaker either. Slow down just a little. Pause between phrases. Open your mouth more to pronounce the sounds. Smile. Let your tone carry the meaning. You'll be surprised how effective that is. Let's go deeper. Clarity doesn't just mean pronunciation. It also means choosing the right words. Often, learners try to translate from their native language, and the sentence becomes too complex or unnatural in English. For example, someone might say, "I desire to consume nourishment." That's not wrong, but it sounds odd. Instead, "I want to eat" is better. It's short and familiar. English speakers value simple expressions. They're easier to understand and more relatable. In France, we have Amélie, a learner who joined our online group sessions. She told us she always tried to sound professional and intelligent in English, using long phrases she learned in books. But her conversations were slow and sometimes confusing. After hearing this same advice, clarity over perfection, she decided to change her approach. She started using shorter, clearer sentences. She said things like, "I like this movie because it's funny," instead of, "The cinematic experience was pleasing due to its humorous content." Her conversations became smoother. She could focus on listening too, instead of constantly thinking about grammar. Amelie's experience shows how simple changes can make a big difference. She stopped focusing on sounding perfect, and she started enjoying the language. She could finally have fun with English, which is something we often forget. Learning a language should be joyful, not stressful. Another part of speaking clearly is being calm. Sometimes our nerves get in the way. You might know the words, but when you're nervous, they just won't come. That's normal. We all go through it. But if you remind yourself to breathe and speak slowly, your brain will have more time to organize your thoughts. Your listener will also have more time to understand you. Speaking calmly shows confidence, even when you feel nervous inside. So remember, the next time you speak English with someone, whether it's a stranger or a friend, ask yourself, am I trying to be perfect, or am I trying to be clear? If your goal is clarity, you're already winning. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. People don't remember your grammar. They remember how you made them feel. And when you speak clearly, you help them feel safe, respected, and understood. We're not here to be perfect speakers. We're here to connect. And connection starts with clarity. Let me tell you the story of Tomas, a young man from Spain who found himself on an unexpected journey of learning English, one that didn't start in a classroom, but in the middle of an ordinary day at work. Tomas lived in Madrid and worked at a small but busy bakery in the heart of the city. He had been working there for almost a year, and although he was good at what he did, baking bread, preparing coffee, and greeting customers with a smile, he had always avoided speaking English. He had studied some in school, like most people, but had never used it in real life. In his mind, English was something for school exams or tourists, not something he needed every day. But all of that changed one morning when an American customer walked in. She smiled and said, "Hi, do you have any gluten-free pastries?" Tomas froze. In that moment, everything he knew about English disappeared from his mind. He understood a few words. Gluten-free sounded familiar, but he didn't know how to answer. His mind was racing and he felt embarrassed. He smiled nervously and said, "Sorry, no English." The woman smiled back and said, "No problem," then left the bakery. That moment stayed with Tomas for the rest of the day. He kept thinking, what if I could have answered her? What if I knew just a few simple phrases? He wasn't angry at himself, but he felt motivated. That evening, when he got home, he took out a small notebook and wrote down the question he had heard. "Do you have any gluten-free pastries?" Then he wrote a possible answer. "Sorry, we don't have gluten-free pastries." He looked up the words he didn't know, practiced saying them out loud, and read the sentence again and again. The next day, he brought the notebook with him to the bakery. During his breaks, he opened it and practiced silently. He added more sentences, things he thought customers might ask. How much is this? Can I pay by card? What's in this cake? For each question, he wrote a simple answer. Nothing fancy. Just useful phrases he could actually say in a real situation. He didn't worry about grammar rules or sounding perfect. His goal was to be able to respond, clearly and kindly. Tomas also started listening to short English podcasts while he walked to work. He didn't understand everything, but he kept listening, just letting the rhythm of the language sink in. At night, he sometimes watched videos with English subtitles. If he heard a phrase he liked, he paused the video and wrote it down in his notebook. That notebook became his personal English guide, filled with real, useful expressions for his daily life. Something surprising started to happen after a few weeks. He began to feel more confident. One day, a tourist came in and asked, "Do you have almond croissants?" And this time, Tomas didn't freeze. He answered, "Yes, we have. One moment." His sentence wasn't perfect, but the customer smiled and said, "Great, I'll take two." That moment changed everything. It showed Tomas that he didn't need to be fluent to be helpful. He just needed to be prepared and willing to try. He kept going. Each time he had a new interaction in English, he wrote it down. If he didn't know how to say something, he looked it up later and practiced it. Over time, he added phrases like, "It has nuts," "It's vegan," or "Would you like anything to drink?" He even practiced simple greetings and small talk. "Good morning. Where are you from? Enjoy your stay in Madrid." In just 2 months, Tomas had built a solid set of expressions that he could use with confidence. English speakers who came into the bakery were surprised and delighted when he spoke to them. They often said things like, "Your English is great," or "Thank you for helping." These compliments gave Tomas even more motivation to keep learning. But perhaps the most important change happened inside. Tomas no longer felt afraid of English. He no longer saw it as something difficult or distant. Instead, it became part of his daily routine, something practical and useful. He realized that learning English didn't mean studying for hours every night. It meant doing a little every day, writing one phrase, practicing one answer, listening for 10 minutes. These small steps, taken consistently, made a big difference. Tomas's story is powerful because it shows what can happen when you decide to take action, even if it's a small one. He didn't wait for a perfect moment. He didn't wait to feel ready. He started with what he had, a notebook, a pen, and a strong reason to improve. He didn't try to learn every rule of English. He focused on what mattered to him, speaking to customers at his job. This is something you can apply to your own life too. Maybe you work in a cafe or a store or a school. Maybe you don't use English every day, but you want to be ready when the moment comes. Start by thinking about the situations you might face. What are the common questions? What are the phrases you wish you could say? Write them down. Practice them slowly. Say them out loud. You don't need a big vocabulary. You need useful words, real sentences. Confidence comes from repetition. And don't forget, mistakes are part of the process. Tomas made mistakes. He forgot words. He said things wrong. But he kept going. He didn't let one bad moment stop him from learning. He used it as fuel to get better. That's the key. Tomas's story reminds us that learning English isn't about talent. It's about consistency. And it starts with a decision to take the first step, even if it's just writing one phrase in a notebook today. Now let's talk about something incredibly useful and simple that can make a big impact on your English journey. I like to call it a survival notebook. This is not just a notebook with grammar rules or long vocabulary lists. It's your personal tool to survive real-life situations where English is needed. And the good news is, you only need a few minutes a day to make it work for you. Let me explain how this works. Imagine you are walking through an airport, trying to buy something in a cafe, or asking someone for directions. What kind of phrases would you actually use? Would you need to talk about complex grammar? No. You'd probably say things like, "Excuse me, can you help me? How much is this?" Or, "Thank you very much." These are small phrases, but they are powerful. They help you connect, solve problems, and feel confident in a moment where communication really matters. That's exactly what your survival notebook is for. It's a small notebook, or a digital note on your phone, where you collect useful phrases that fit your daily life. The idea is not to fill the pages with hundreds of words, but to choose phrases that are clear, short, and ready to use. For example, phrases like, I don't understand, can you say that again? Where is the nearest metro station? Or, I'm learning English, thank you for your patience, can be a lifesaver. In a real situation, start small. You don't need to write an entire book. Just begin with 5 to 10 key phrases that are most important for you. Think about your daily life, where you go, what you do, who you talk to. If you work in customer service, your notebook might include things like, how can I help you? Would you like a bag? Or, please wait a moment. If you travel, maybe you'll write, I have a reservation. Where is the check-in counter? Or, I need help with my luggage. The goal is to make your notebook practical and personal. Once you have your phrases, practice them every day for just 5 minutes. Read them out loud slowly. Repeat them. Try to say them with confidence. If you're not sure how a phrase sounds, you can look for the pronunciation online or ask someone who speaks English. You can also listen to native speakers say similar phrases in videos or podcasts. The more you hear and repeat these expressions, the more natural they will become. What's important is that you practice these phrases often. Repetition is key. Don't just read them once and forget about them. Think of your survival notebook like physical exercise. You don't get strong by going to the gym one time. You build strength by training regularly. It's the same with speaking. These simple phrases become part of your voice when you use them again and again. And don't worry about grammar. The goal here is communication, not perfection. For example, instead of trying to say, I would greatly appreciate your assistance, you can say, can you help me, please? It's shorter, easier to say, and just as polite. Native speakers will understand you and they will appreciate your effort. Some learners feel shy about speaking because they don't want to make mistakes. But when you use phrases from your notebook, you are preparing yourself to speak with confidence. You won't have to search for words. You'll already have them ready. That's what makes the survival notebook such a powerful tool. It gives you control in situations that would normally feel stressful or uncertain. Another tip is to group your phrases by category. For example, you can have one section for greetings and introductions. Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Anya. Where are you from? Then another section for travel. What time does the bus leave? Is this seat taken? I'm going to the airport. Another section could be for restaurants or shopping. Can I see the menu? I'd like a coffee, please. Do you accept credit cards? You can organize it in a way that makes sense for you. You can also add a section for emergencies or asking for help. Phrases like, I need a doctor, I lost my passport, please call the police, or I don't feel well can be very useful in unexpected situations. Having these phrases written down, practiced, and familiar can give you peace of mind when you travel or speak to someone new. Some learners also like to write the phrases in their own language on one side and in English on the other. That's totally fine in the beginning. But as you practice more, try to focus only on the English side. Cover the translation and see if you remember the meaning. This helps train your brain to think directly in English without always translating. If you want to go one step further, you can create short dialogues using your phrases. For example, if you wrote down, can I help you? And yes, I'm looking for the train station, you can imagine the full conversation. Excuse me, can I help you? Yes, I'm looking for the train station. It's just around the corner. Thank you so much. Practicing these little conversations out loud, even if you're alone, helps build fluency and confidence. Many learners around the world have used this method. I've spoken to people from Brazil, Turkey, Vietnam, Egypt, and Germany who all told me that a survival notebook helped them speak better, faster. They stopped feeling blocked. They didn't need to know every word. They just needed the right ones. And that's exactly what you're building with this habit. Just 5 minutes a day with your notebook can change how you feel about speaking English. It's a simple routine, but it's powerful. It gives you something to focus on, something that's yours and something that grows with you. Let me tell you about Aiko, a young woman from Japan who had always been afraid to speak English. Ever since she was a teenager, she had studied English in school, learned grammar, memorized vocabulary, and passed many exams. But when it came to speaking, she froze. Her main fear wasn't about not knowing the words. It was about her pronunciation. She believed that her accent was too strong, that people wouldn't understand her, or worse, that they would laugh. So, for years, she avoided situations where she needed to speak English. She would smile politely, nod, and hope the conversation ended quickly. But something changed one summer when Aiko traveled to France. She had always wanted to visit Europe, and after saving for many months, she finally made the trip. Her plan was to explore different cities by train and enjoy the food, the culture, and the beautiful sights. English was not the native language in France, of course, but Aiko knew it would be her main tool to communicate with others. Still, she hoped she wouldn't have to speak much. She imagined she could rely on maps, signs, and perhaps some gestures. Everything was going well until one afternoon in Lyon. Aiko had planned to catch a bus to a nearby village. She had her ticket, her small backpack, and her phone ready with the bus schedule. But something unexpected happened. There was a change in the bus stop location, and she didn't notice the announcement in French. She waited in the wrong place. By the time she realized the mistake, the bus had already left. She stood there, confused and unsure of what to do. Her phone had low battery. The next bus was hours away. She looked around for someone to ask, but she hesitated. Her heart was beating fast. She didn't speak French, and she didn't want to make a mistake in English. That same fear came back, the fear of sounding wrong. Then she saw a woman who looked just as confused. The woman was older, perhaps in her 60s, with short gray hair and a kind face. She was looking at a map and shaking her head. Aiko took a deep breath, walked toward her, and said quietly, "Excuse me, are you also looking for the bus to Annecy?" The woman looked up and smiled. "Yes," she said. "I think I missed it." That was the beginning of a beautiful and unexpected moment. The woman introduced herself as Ingrid. She was from Germany and had been traveling alone as well. Her French was also limited, and she was using English to get by. Suddenly, Aiko felt less alone. She realized that she didn't have to speak perfectly. She just had to speak. Together, they found a small cafe near the station and sat down to figure out their next steps. Over coffee, they began to talk. Aiko was nervous at first, stumbling over her words and apologizing for her pronunciation. But Ingrid reassured her, saying, "Your English is very good, I understand you." Those words felt like magic. Aiko's shoulders relaxed. She smiled. She began to speak more freely. They talked about travel, food, and even a little about their lives back home. That afternoon turned into a turning point for Aiko. She realized something powerful. Her fear of being imperfect had been stronger than the actual difficulty of speaking. When she finally let go of that fear, even just a little, she was able to connect with someone new. That connection, that conversation, became more important than saying every word correctly. Later, they found a new bus schedule and decided to take the next one together. On the ride, they sat side by side, talking and laughing. Ingrid shared pictures of her grandchildren, and Aiko told her about her favorite Japanese dishes. They exchanged emails and promised to keep in touch. When Aiko returned to Japan, something inside her had shifted. She no longer saw English as a test to pass or a skill she had to be perfect at. She saw it as a tool to connect, to solve problems, to make friends. She began practicing a little every day, not with grammar books, but by listening to English podcasts, watching short videos, and talking to herself in English when walking or cooking. Slowly, her confidence grew. She even joined a local language exchange group. The first time she walked into the room, she felt that old fear again. But then she remembered that day in Lyon, sitting with Ingrid, laughing over coffee. She remembered how good it felt to be understood and to understand. That memory gave her strength. And so she introduced herself with a smile and said, "Hi, I'm Aiko. I'm learning English." What Aiko learned from that day is something I want every listener to remember. You don't have to be perfect to be understood. You don't need to speak like a native speaker to make a connection. Your voice matters, and your effort is valuable. Every time you speak, even if it's just one sentence, you are building something important. You are building confidence, experience, and courage. Sometimes, the moment that helps us grow doesn't happen in a classroom. It happens when we least expect it, on a street, at a bus stop, in a cafe. It happens when we are lost and need help. It happens when we decide to speak even though we're scared. And when we do, we often find kindness, understanding, and sometimes even friendship. So if you've ever felt like Aiko, afraid of how you sound or worried about your accent, Know that you are not alone. Many learners around the world feel the same way, but you don't have to stay silent. Start small, take a deep breath, and say that first word. You might be surprised by what happens next. Let's talk about something very real and very common in the journey of learning English: fear. More specifically, the fear of speaking. Maybe you've experienced it too. The moment when someone speaks to you in English and your brain seems to freeze. You might know the words. You've probably studied the grammar, but still, you can't get the sentence out. Your mouth won't move. Or you start speaking, but suddenly you feel embarrassed about your accent or unsure about your grammar. So you stop. This fear is completely normal. And here's something important I want you to know. Fear doesn't mean you're not ready. It means you care. You care about being understood. You care about making a good impression. You care about getting it right. But ironically, waiting until you feel completely ready to speak can keep you stuck. The truth is, we don't learn to swim by standing next to the pool and reading about water. We learn by jumping in. And the same thing happens with English. You don't have to wait until you feel confident to speak. You gain confidence by speaking. Here's the key idea. Real situations activate real learning. When you are in a situation that matters, when there's a need, an emotion, or a goal, your brain pays more attention. Your senses are more alert. You remember more. You process faster. That's why a short, simple conversation in a store or asking for directions on the street can teach you more than hours of silent study. Think about it this way. When you're watching a movie and hear a phrase you don't know, you might forget it 5 minutes later. But if you're at a train station and you need to ask what time the next train arrives and you say it in English, and someone responds and you understand, it stays with you. Why? Because you were emotionally involved. You had a reason. You had a purpose. You were a participant, not just an observer. This is why I encourage you to face your fear in small, real ways. Start by using English in everyday situations, even if it's just one sentence. Greet a tourist in your city. Say good morning to a colleague or classmate you've never spoken to in English before. Order your coffee in English, even if the barista speaks your native language. These moments may feel small, but they are powerful. They train your brain to respond to English in real time. You might think, but what if I make a mistake? And I understand that. Making mistakes can feel uncomfortable. But let me tell you something. Mistakes are part of the process. Every fluent speaker you know has made hundreds, maybe thousands of mistakes. That's how they got fluent. Mistakes are not signs of failure. They are signs of progress. When you make a mistake, you give yourself a chance to improve. You find your weak spots and you work on them. Think about babies learning their first language. They make mistakes all the time. They say things in the wrong order. They invent words. They use the wrong names for things. But do we laugh at them or tell them to stop speaking? No. We encourage them. We understand that learning takes time. So why do we expect ourselves to be perfect in a second language? You are allowed to be a beginner. You are allowed to speak slowly. You are allowed to get it wrong. Now, let's be practical. If you want to face your fear, the first step is to prepare your mind. Accept that fear will be part of the experience, but that it's not a wall. It's a signal. Fear means you're about to grow. So welcome it. Say to yourself, yes, I'm nervous, but I'm going to try anyway. Second, find low pressure ways to speak English. You don't need a big stage or a formal presentation. You need short, real moments. Talk to yourself in English while cooking. Repeat phrases you hear on podcasts. Send a voice message to a language partner. Join an online group where people are kind and patient. The more you speak, the easier it becomes. Think of speaking like building a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it gets. Another helpful idea is to shift your focus. When you're speaking English, don't think about how you sound. Think about the other person. Are they understanding you? Are you connecting? Is your message clear? Language is a tool for communication, not a performance. Focus on being understood, not on sounding perfect. You can also prepare some phrases that give you confidence. For example, if you forget a word, you can say, "Sorry, I don't know how to say this in English, but let me try to explain." Or if you don't understand someone, say, "Can you repeat that more slowly, please?" These are simple, respectful ways to keep the conversation going, and they show that you are trying. And that's what people appreciate the most. One more thing. Remember that the people you talk to, especially in international environments, often understand what it means to learn a second language. They might be learners too. Or they've talked to many people with different accents and styles. Most people are not judging you. In fact, most people admire the courage it takes to speak in another language. They will be happy that you tried. So the next time you feel that nervous energy, the butterflies in your stomach, the racing heartbeat, don't run away from it. Use it. That energy is your mind waking up, getting ready to do something meaningful. Step into it. Speak one word, then another, then one sentence. Little by little, that fear will turn into strength. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be brave for one moment. That's all it takes. One moment of courage to say something out loud. One moment of courage to ask a question. One moment of courage to try. Because the real progress in English and in life comes when you do the thing you thought you couldn't do. When you speak even though your hands are shaking. When you try even though you're scared. That's when the magic happens. Let me tell you a story about someone whose way of learning English was anything but traditional. His name is Louis, and he lives in Lyon, France. Louis is a musician. Ever since he was a child, he loved music. He grew up listening to all kinds of songs, from French classics to American rock, British pop, jazz, blues, and everything in between. But there was something about English language songs that fascinated him. The rhythm, the emotion, the sound of the words. He didn't understand the lyrics at first, but he could feel their meaning through the melody. When Louis was in his early teens, he started playing the guitar. He taught himself using online videos and would spend hours in his room learning chords and singing along with his favorite artists. He didn't speak English fluently, but he wanted to understand the songs he loved. So he started doing something simple and powerful. He wrote down the lyrics, one line at a time, and then tried to translate them. At first, he used a dictionary. Later, he started recognizing words and expressions without needing to look them up. He kept a notebook where he would copy song lyrics and write his own translations next to them. Sometimes the words didn't make sense directly, so he would listen carefully, repeat them aloud, and try to understand their meaning in context. He started noticing phrasal verbs, idioms, slang, and poetic expressions that don't appear in textbooks. Through music, English became alive for him. Not just rules and vocabulary, but emotion, culture, and creativity. Louis didn't learn English from a classroom or a teacher. He learned from the rhythm of songs, from the feeling behind the words, from repeating and listening and connecting the language to something personal. Music became his teacher. One day when he was 22, Louis was listening to a song by an American artist he deeply admired. It was a slow, emotional ballad about overcoming fear and finding your path in life. Louis had listened to that song dozens of times before, but that day it hit him differently. The lyrics described exactly how he felt. Lost in life, unsure about his music, and searching for meaning. He sat down and decided to write something he had never written before. A letter in English. It wasn't long or complicated. It was just honest. He wrote about how much the artist's music had helped him through hard times. He thanked him for the words, for the inspiration, for creating something that could reach across countries and cultures. Louis was nervous. He read the letter over and over, correcting the grammar and checking the vocabulary. Finally, he found the artist's official website and sent the message through the contact form, not really expecting anything to happen. A few weeks later, something amazing happened. Louis was checking his email and saw a reply. The subject line read, "Thank you for your message." It was from the artist's team, but the message inside was clearly written by the artist himself. He said, "Louis, thank you for your beautiful words. It means a lot to know that my music made a difference in someone's life. Keep playing, keep writing, and don't stop believing in yourself." That was it. Just a few sentences. But for Louis, it felt like the world stopped turning for a moment. He read the message again and again. He couldn't believe it. His English had reached someone he admired deeply. His message had been understood. And more than that, it had touched someone else's life. That moment gave Louis a new kind of confidence. He realized that English wasn't just something to be studied. It was a bridge. A tool that allowed him to connect, to express, to share who he really was with people outside his native language and country. After that, Louis started writing his own songs in English. They weren't perfect at first, but they were real. He played them at small venues in his city. Sometimes tourists or international students came to his shows, and they understood the lyrics. He felt proud, not because his English was flawless, but because it was true. He was communicating from the heart. What Louis's story shows us is that learning a language is not always about rules and drills. Sometimes it's about connection. When you tie English to something you love, whether it's music, movies, books, or personal stories, it sticks. You don't learn because you have to. You learn because you want to, because it means something to you. And that emotional connection changes everything. So many people think they have to study in a certain way to become fluent. But Louis proves that you can follow your passion and still make incredible progress. He never had formal lessons, but because he was consistent, curious, and emotionally connected to the language, he developed strong listening skills, an intuitive sense of vocabulary, and the courage to write and speak in English. Even more importantly, he learned to trust himself. He didn't let fear or imperfection stop him. He knew that his message was more important than the mistakes, and because of that, he was able to create something beautiful, not just music, but human connection through language. Louis still writes in his notebook. He still listens to songs with a pen in hand. He says that even now, after all these years, he's still discovering new words and meanings. And every time he performs one of his English songs, he thinks back to the day he wrote that letter and received that reply. That simple exchange changed everything. Let me share something with you that I believe can change the way you learn English. It's simple, but very powerful. Use what you love. That's right. Whether it's music, movies, sports, fashion, cooking, or travel, learning through something that genuinely excites you makes the entire experience more natural, more fun, and most importantly, more sustainable. When you enjoy the content you're interacting with, your brain pays closer attention. You don't feel like you're studying. You're just living. You're watching a show you love. You're reading an article about your favorite football team. You're listening to a song that moves you. And without realizing it, you're absorbing vocabulary, expressions, pronunciation, and rhythm. Think about it for a moment. When someone tries to learn from a boring textbook or memorizes lists of random words without context, the motivation often disappears after a few days. It becomes a chore. But if you focus on something that lights a fire in you, something that you already do in your own language, the learning flows more easily. Why? Because there's emotion, and emotion creates memory. I'll give you a few examples of how this works. Let's say you love movies. Instead of watching a film in your native language, try watching it in English with subtitles in English. Choose a genre you enjoy: romance, science fiction, comedy, documentaries. The key is to engage with something that you already like. As you listen to the dialogues, pay attention to common phrases. Pause when necessary. Rewind and listen again. You'll notice expressions being repeated. The way people greet each other. How they express surprise, frustration, joy. Over time, these become part of your own vocabulary. Now let's say your passion is cooking. Did you know there are hundreds of cooking channels on YouTube in English? You can watch recipes, cooking tips, restaurant reviews, all while learning the language. The best part? The words are often repeated. Ingredients, utensils, actions like mix and stir, bake, and serve. When vocabulary is connected to an action you understand, it sticks. And because you're already interested in the topic, you'll want to come back for more. For sports lovers, the possibilities are endless. You can watch interviews with athletes, follow sports news, listen to podcasts about your favorite team, or read match reports on international websites. You'll learn the vocabulary of the game, terms like goal, penalty, championship, or injury. But you'll also learn how fans talk, how commentators describe events, and how athletes express themselves under pressure. Sports language is full of metaphors and emotion, which makes it rich and memorable. The same goes for music. If there's a band or singer you love, start reading the lyrics. Sing along. Try to write what you hear and then compare it with the official lyrics. This is called dictation, and it's a powerful listening exercise. It sharpens your ear and helps you recognize the sounds of English in real life. not just the way it's written in textbooks. Another idea is to follow social media accounts in English that post about your interests. If you love photography, follow English-speaking photographers. If you like fashion, find influencers or magazines that talk about style in English. You'll pick up the vocabulary that's relevant to what you care about, and you'll see how native speakers communicate online. This is what I call language through life. You're not separating English from your daily routine. You're blending it into what you already do. That's how children learn language. They hear it all around them, in the things they love, in play, in music, in conversations. And you can do the same. The more personal the connection, the stronger the memory. Your brain remembers what matters to you. I want to encourage you to take a few minutes after this episode and make a short list. What are 3 things you love doing? Then ask yourself, how can I connect these things to English? Maybe it's switching your phone to English. Maybe it's subscribing to an English language YouTube channel about gardening or hiking or skincare. Maybe it's finding a podcast where someone talks about history, science, or books. Start with just one. Make it part of your routine. Let's say you spend 10 minutes a day doing something in English that you already enjoy. After 1 week, that's over an hour of learning without feeling like you studied. After 1 month, it's 4 or 5 hours. And more than the time, it's the quality of the exposure. Because you're interested, your brain is fully engaged. You're not forcing anything. You're inviting the language into your world, and don't worry about understanding everything. That's not the goal. Understanding a little more each day is the goal. Learning language is not about perfection. It's about participation. It's about showing up again and again, being curious, and finding joy in the process. Some learners feel guilty for watching series instead of reading grammar books. But here's the truth. If the series keeps you interested and brings you back to the language day after day, then it's working. And that's what matters. So next time you want to study English, ask yourself, what do I feel like doing right now? And then ask, can I do this in English? Whether it's playing a video game, watching a makeup tutorial, listening to a TED Talk, or following a yoga session, you're not just doing the activity, you're also learning a new language at the same time. Let English become part of what you already love. That's how you make it yours. That's how you stop seeing it as a subject and start living it as a real personal tool for expression, discovery, and connection. That's how language truly becomes a part of you. Let me tell you about someone whose story might inspire you to see your English journey from a new angle. Her name is Anya. She's from Germany and lives in a small town not far from Hamburg. Anya never considered herself a fluent English speaker. In fact, she often avoided conversations in English because she was afraid of making mistakes. She understood the language pretty well. She could watch videos, read articles, and follow instructions. But when it came time to speak, she froze. She worried about grammar. She felt unsure about pronunciation. She hesitated. One day, while walking through a tourist area near her home, Anya noticed a couple trying to ask for directions in English. They were struggling to communicate with the shop owner. The woman kept repeating the same question, slower each time, and the man looked frustrated. People were walking by, pretending not to notice. Anya stood there for a moment, debating whether to step in. Her heart was racing. She thought, what if I say something wrong? But then another thought came. What if they just need someone to try? So she walked over, smiled, and said, "Can I help you?" Her English was a bit shaky, but it didn't matter. The couple smiled back immediately. The woman said, "Oh, thank you. We're just trying to find the train station." Anya gave them directions the best she could. They understood. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but it changed something in her. For the first time, she felt how useful her English really was. She realized that even imperfect English can solve real problems and create real connections. That night, Anya made a decision. She didn't want to hide anymore. She didn't want to wait until she was perfect to speak. So she created a personal challenge for herself. Every day, whenever she met someone speaking English at the bakery, at the supermarket, at the train station, she would do something simple. It could be a smile, a word of encouragement, a short reply like, "You're doing great," or "I understand you." Just something to make the person feel seen and supported. And something interesting happened. The more she encouraged others, the more she felt encouraged herself. Helping other people feel more confident in their English made her feel braver too. It created a safe space not only for them but also for her. She started to realize that language is about connection, not perfection. It's not a test. It's a bridge. Anya noticed that she began to speak more naturally. Her sentences became smoother. Her pronunciation improved. But not because she was studying harder. It was because she was using English in a meaningful way. She was using it with purpose, with kindness. She stopped worrying so much about getting everything right. Instead, she focused on making someone's day better, even with just a few words. One afternoon, a young man from Brazil was looking lost at the train station. He approached a group of people, asking in English if anyone could help him buy a ticket. They all shook their heads and walked away. Anya stepped in. She helped him use the ticket machine and explained how to find his platform. At the end, he said, "Thank you. I was so nervous to speak English. People don't always give me a chance." Anya smiled and said, "I understand. But you're doing great. Keep going." She walked away feeling proud, not just of her English, but of her courage. Through these daily moments, Anya built not only her language skills, but also a stronger sense of who she was. She didn't have to be perfect to be helpful. She didn't have to be fluent to be kind. And she saw that encouraging others was one of the best ways to encourage herself. It's a beautiful shift in perspective, isn't it? Sometimes we think we need to be the best, to be experts, to be flawless before we're allowed to participate. But what if the opposite is true? What if by participating we grow? What if by helping someone else we move forward ourselves? Anya began writing down some of the phrases she liked using with others. Simple ones like, "Do you need help?" "I understand you," "Take your time," and "You're doing great." She practiced them daily, not in front of a mirror or in a classroom, but in real conversations. Each phrase became part of her natural speech. Her vocabulary grew because she kept using the same words in different ways. Her confidence grew because she saw the positive reactions from the people she helped. Soon, she started using English not just to help others, but to ask questions herself. She had conversations with tourists about where they were from, what they liked about Germany, and what their experience was like. These small talks became bigger talks. She began to enjoy the sound of her own English voice. The hesitation faded. The fear didn't disappear completely, but it no longer controlled her. Anya told me something that really stayed with me. She said, "I thought I needed to study more, but what I really needed was to care more. When I cared about people, the language came." That idea, that caring is more powerful than knowing, can truly transform how we approach language learning. It's not about showing how much you know. It's about showing that you're willing to connect. If you ever feel stuck or unsure of your English, think about Anya. You don't have to know everything. You just need the courage to show up. Sometimes helping someone else is the key to helping yourself. Sometimes a kind word in simple English is all it takes to make someone's day, and your own, a little brighter. Now, let's talk about something that might seem surprising at first. The idea that teaching and supporting others can actually help you learn. It's one of the most powerful tools we often overlook. When you take a moment to explain something, repeat a sentence someone's struggling with, or simply encourage someone who's feeling insecure, you're not just helping them, you're helping yourself too. Have you ever tried to explain something in English to a friend, even if it was just a small detail, like the difference between do and make, or when to use at versus in? If you have, you probably noticed something interesting. You started to think more deeply about the structure of the sentence. You paid attention to the rules, or maybe you even questioned them. And maybe, in the process of helping someone else, you understood that point more clearly than ever before. That's because when you teach, even in the simplest way, you're reviewing. You're reinforcing what you already know. You're organizing it in your mind in a way that makes sense. And when someone asks a question, it often reveals a gap in your own understanding, which gives you the perfect opportunity to fill it. Teaching is not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to share what you do know and grow from there. And encouragement? That's a lesson in itself. When you encourage someone else to keep going, to not be afraid of mistakes, to celebrate progress, you're learning to do the same with yourself. Every time you say, "It's okay, just try" to someone else, you're sending that message to your own brain too. You're building an internal voice that's supportive, not critical. And trust me, that voice is essential when learning a new language. Let's imagine a scenario. You join an online community or forum where people practice English together. Maybe it's on a language exchange website or a social media group. Someone posts a question like, "What's the difference between I've been and I was?" You read it and you think, I kind of know that. So you write a short explanation. You give an example. You keep it simple. Maybe you're not 100% sure it's perfect, but you're trying. And in that moment, you are engaging with the language in a meaningful way. You might get feedback from others. Maybe someone adds to your answer or offers another example. That's learning. That's growth. And because you were involved, that information will stick with you much longer than something you just read passively. You were emotionally and mentally engaged. Now imagine you're part of a group chat where members are all learning English. One day someone writes, "I'm afraid to speak. I always get nervous." You reply, "Me too, but we can help each other." That simple act of connection not only lifts someone else, it lifts you too. You've admitted your fear, but also taken a step forward. And that step forward is progress. There's also something very human about helping others. It reminds you that learning is not a race. It's not about who's better or faster. It's about moving forward together. In these spaces, online groups, conversation clubs, study partners, you start to see that everyone struggles sometimes. Everyone makes mistakes. And that shared vulnerability creates a safe environment where you feel less alone. And remember, you don't need to be fluent to help someone. If you're a beginner, you can help someone who's just starting. If you're intermediate, you can support other intermediates or beginners. There is always someone who can benefit from what you've already learned. And while you're helping, you're reviewing vocabulary, sentence structure, pronunciation tips, and cultural differences, all while practicing kindness and communication. Let me tell you about a listener who reached out to us last year. Her name is Layla, and she's originally from Morocco but now lives in Canada. She was feeling stuck at the intermediate level. She could understand English pretty well, and she could write basic emails, but speaking still felt difficult. She joined a Facebook group for English learners and decided she would respond to at least one question a day. At first, it was hard. She double-checked everything before posting. But after a few weeks, it became part of her routine. Layla told me that helping others with simple grammar questions and encouraging shy members of the group gave her a sense of purpose. It made her feel more confident. And guess what? Her own writing improved. She began using new vocabulary more naturally. She became more comfortable typing quickly in English. She even started sending voice messages in the group, something she never thought she'd do. And all this happened not because she was focusing on herself, but because she was focusing on helping. The irony is beautiful, isn't it? Sometimes when we stop trying so hard to fix ourselves and instead offer what we have to others, we grow more than we ever imagined. So how can you try this in your own routine? First, find a space where English learners gather. It could be an app, a forum, a Facebook group, a Discord server, or even a comment section under a YouTube video. Look for questions you can answer, or people you can cheer on. Don't worry about being perfect. That's not the point. The goal is to participate. Second, be kind, not just to others, but also to yourself. If you make a mistake while helping, that's okay. You're learning too. Every time you try, you're making your English stronger and your mindset healthier. Third, remember that small actions matter. One kind message, one short explanation, one shared experience. These are not just gestures. They're learning moments, they're steps forward, and over time, they build something powerful. Language learning is not just about memory or grammar. It's also about empathy, patience, and communication. And when you practice those skills with others, they become part of your own voice. A voice that's not just correct, but connected. Not just fluent, but human. Now, I want to talk directly to you, the person listening right now, wherever you are in the world. Maybe you're walking to work, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're just relaxing at home. Wherever you are, this is your moment. You've just listened to stories of people like Jiwu, Tomas, Aiko, Louis, and Anya. These are stories about courage, effort, and small but powerful steps in the real world. So let me ask you something simple. Have you ever lived something like that? Maybe it wasn't exactly the same. Maybe you didn't help a tourist or write to a famous musician. But maybe one day you answered a question in English that you were nervous about. Or you understood a word in a movie that made you smile. Maybe you helped a friend translate something or tried to explain directions to someone in English. These are not small things. These are moments that count. Language is not something we only learn in books. It's something we live. And sometimes the most powerful lessons happen when we're not even trying to learn. They happen when we're simply doing something human, connecting, helping, asking, listening. So I want you to pause and think, what is one small action you can take today that brings you a little closer to the English speaker you want to become? Maybe you can write down one sentence in a notebook that you'll try to use this week. Maybe you'll smile and say hello to a foreigner in your city. Maybe you'll watch a short video in English and repeat a few phrases out loud. Or maybe you'll just send a message in a group or comment on a post in English. It doesn't need to be big. What matters is that it's real. Something small, something honest. The truth is, the path to confidence in English isn't about waiting for a perfect day or a perfect class. It's about these little moments where you say, let me try. That's it. That one thought is already a step forward. So what could that step be for you today? You don't have to tell me right now, but think about it. Keep it in your heart today. And when you see the opportunity, just take it. Say the word. Write the sentence. Smile and speak. These actions create the path. And little by little, you build something real. You build confidence. You build fluency. You build your voice in English. And now I want to ask one more thing. But it's very gentle, very simple. If what you heard today made you reflect, if it touched something inside you or reminded you of your own story, would you consider following our podcast? It helps you stay connected to this journey, but also helps more people find us. And maybe there's someone you know, a friend, a classmate, someone in your family who is also learning English and could use a little inspiration. You can send them this episode. Or even better, ask them the same question. What is one small thing you can do today to practice English in real life? That one question can start a great conversation. And when you talk about learning, you're already learning more. This podcast, the English Talk Community Playlist, was created for this exact reason, not just to teach grammar or vocabulary, but to help you feel that you are not alone, to remind you that language learning is emotional, personal, full of ups and downs, and that's okay. Everyone has their own rhythm, their own fears, their own victories, and sharing these experiences helps all of us move forward. So, again, if this message speaks to you, follow the podcast. It's free, and it keeps you connected to a space that believes in kindness, small steps, and the power of trying. And if you feel like sharing it with someone, I hope you do. Maybe it will be the exact thing they needed to hear today. Let's keep this conversation going, not just between me and you, but between all of us. Language is connection, and connection starts with small moments, like this one. As we start to reflect on everything we've explored today, I want you to take a breath and think about your own path. The journey of learning English doesn't need to look like anyone else's. It doesn't have to follow a strict rule, a perfect plan, or some idea of what fluency should look like. It just has to be yours. And that by itself is more than enough. Maybe no one ever told you this before, but you don't need to be perfect to make progress. You just need to be present and willing to take the next step. One of the biggest mistakes people make when learning English or any language is believing that it's a race, that they have to learn fast, speak perfectly, and avoid mistakes. But the truth is, language is not a race. It's not a test. It's not a competition. It's a tool, a bridge, a way to express yourself and connect with people from all around the world. And the way we build that bridge is by showing up day after day with clarity, courage, and a little bit of curiosity. You've heard me say this before, but it's worth repeating. Small steps matter. Every time you choose to listen, speak, write, or read in English, even if it's just for 5 minutes, you are feeding your future fluency. Every time you make a mistake and learn from it, you're doing what native speakers do too. Every time you say something, even if it's simple, even if your grammar isn't perfect, you are using your voice, and your voice matters. What I find most beautiful about language learning is that it reflects life itself. Some days are smooth, some days are confusing, some days you feel confident, and some days you want to hide. That's okay. That's part of it. Learning a language teaches you much more than grammar and vocabulary. It teaches you patience. It teaches you humility, and it teaches you how to get back up again after you fall. Think back to Jiwu in South Korea. One kind moment opened a door. to her confidence. Or Tomas in Spain, who started with a notebook and built a habit. Or Aiko in Japan, who faced her fear in the middle of a difficult moment. Or Louis in France, who followed what he loved and ended up making a real connection. Or Anya in Germany, who discovered that kindness is a form of practice too. None of them were perfect, but they were real. Their learning came from life, not from chasing perfection. You might be surprised how often clarity is more important than accuracy. How a calm, simple sentence can do more than a perfect, complex one. When you speak clearly, people understand you. When you listen with an open heart, you understand more. And when you keep showing up, little by little, you discover just how much you've grown, often without even realizing it. Learning English is not just about speaking, it's about living. It's about seeing the world differently. It's about unlocking movies, songs, books, friendships, job opportunities, and travel adventures. It's about expressing your ideas in a new way. And it's about feeling proud of yourself, not just when you succeed, but when you try. So if today you feel tired or stuck or slow, please remember the fact that you're here, listening, learning, staying curious. That is something to celebrate. You don't need to do everything today. You just need to keep going. A few minutes a day, a few words at a time, a few sentences that make you think or smile or help someone else. And when you feel lost, like progress is too far away, look at the stories we've shared. Real people, real challenges, and real growth. You are part of that same story. Your moment is coming. And maybe it's already here. Maybe it's right now as you listen to these words and reflect on your own journey. Your English doesn't need to sound like a native speaker's. It needs to sound like you, genuine, growing, and grounded in your own experience. So keep choosing courage over fear. Keep choosing clarity over perfection. Keep choosing action over waiting. The moments you think are too small to matter are often the ones that change everything. A sentence written in a notebook, a conversation with a stranger, a phrase you repeat to yourself until it becomes natural. These are your steps. These are your tools. These are your victories. And even on the days when you feel unsure, even when you think, I'm not good enough yet, remind yourself, I'm learning. I'm growing. I'm doing the work. And that's more than enough. Thank you for spending this time with me here on the English Talk Community playlist. I'm Julia, and it has truly been a pleasure to walk with you through today's episode. Whether you were listening while commuting, walking, cooking, or just taking a moment for yourself, I'm glad you chose to share this space with me. This podcast is a place where we celebrate not only the language itself, but the people learning it. People like you. It's not always easy to stay motivated, especially when life gets busy or progress feels slow. But every time you show up, even for a short moment, you are honoring your journey. That matters. And this podcast is here to remind you of that, again and again, in ways that feel real and human. No pressure, no perfection, just connection, learning, and encouragement, step by step. Today, we talked about how small moments, small gestures, and real emotions can lead to real breakthroughs in English. We shared stories of people from around the world, each with their own fears, habits, and victories. And I hope, as you listened, you saw a part of yourself in each of them. Because the truth is, no matter where you come from or what level you're at, you're not alone in this. Our community is made of people who believe that learning is about more than memorizing words. It's about living them, speaking them, making mistakes and laughing at yourself, trying again, and doing it all with kindness, for others and for yourself. If that's the kind of learner you are or want to be, then you're in the right place. Here, we believe in small, steady steps. We believe in clarity over perfection. We believe that helping others helps us grow. And we believe that your story matters. That's why we share so many of them on this show, to remind you that your journey is part of something bigger, a global community of people learning English not just as a subject, but as a way to connect, understand, and expand their world. You don't need to have all the answers right now. You don't need to speak perfectly or remember every new word. You just need to stay curious, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep believing that this is possible for you. Because it is. Maybe your progress will come through music, like Louis, or by writing phrases in a notebook, like Tomas. Maybe you'll find it in a moment of kindness, like Jiwu. Or maybe in an unexpected challenge, like Aiko. Or maybe it will come when you least expect it, when you're helping someone else, like Anya. Every experience is a new opportunity. Every day is a fresh chance. I know that sometimes you might feel like your English isn't good enough. Maybe you worry that people won't understand you or that you'll make a mistake and feel embarrassed. But let me tell you something that I wish more learners heard. Your message is more important than your mistakes. Your effort is more powerful than your fear. Your voice deserves to be heard exactly as it is right now. So, whenever you need encouragement, come back here. Let this space be a reminder of what you're capable of. You can listen again to any of the stories, pick one of the practical tips to try, or just take a quiet moment to reflect. Whatever you need, this community is here for you. Because learning a language is not something you do alone. It's something we do together. If today's episode brought you something helpful, a new idea, a little motivation, or just a good feeling, I invite you to keep this energy with you. Use it to take one small step. Maybe you'll speak to someone in English today, or write a sentence in your notebook, or listen to a song and try to understand the lyrics. Whatever you choose, let it be something that moves you forward, even if just a little. The English Talk Community playlist will always be here with new stories, new ideas, and new voices to support you. So, I hope you'll come back. I hope you'll keep listening, keep practicing, and keep growing with us. And if you know someone else who's also on this journey, maybe a friend or a classmate, share this podcast with them. Sometimes, hearing the right message at the right time can change everything. Every episode is created with care because we believe your time and your learning matter. And I want you to feel proud of the time you've spent here today. You made a choice to invest in yourself, in your future, in your voice, and that is something worth celebrating. So once again, thank you for listening to the English Talk Community playlist. I'm Julia, and it was an absolute joy to spend this time with you. Keep practicing, keep believing, and keep coming back for more stories, more tips, and more inspiration. Until next time, take care and keep going. Let me know if you'd like the full episode unbroken into a single text or if you're ready to start the next one.